Hey, welcome to Berkeley Co-Housing. I'm Raines Cohen.
I'm Betsy Morris.
We're co-housing coaches and community organizers living here at Berkeley Co-Housing, where we love to take you on a little tour, give you a little taste of how it is that we can live green and simple
And be constantly learning how to get along with each other, as well as making our dreams come true.
and learning from one another, building on each other's work.
So I'm actually wear a research hat and a city planner hat in my background, and Raines comes from a community user group and technology journalism background. Both of us discovered we are all fired up about how do we become empowered to use the basic tools of everyday life. How do we live lives in cooperative peership with other people?
We've learned a bit from visiting over 100 co-housing neighborhoods across the U.S. and hope to share some of the patterns we've noticed and insights as they show up in our community.
So first off, let me say what a great pleasure it is to participate in this collaborative housing and community resilience seminar series. We do not have a research center such as the ESRC in the UK, so we would love to see that start to happen here in the US, and to be able to bring together practitioners, members of co-housing and other intentional communities, along with designers, architects, and policymakers. That's a dream come true. So we're incredibly grateful and appreciative of this chance to speak with you. I wanted to let you know a little bit more about the larger history and context of collaborative housing in the United States. We have a history of intentional communities here, of course, dating back from the 1700s, 1600s, 1700s. And today the Fellowship for Intentional Community tracks many of these intentional communities in our international directory and database.
Co-housing communities start green and get greener, but let's take a look at a little bit how that happens.
Hi, we're at our beautiful Temple of Trash. This is directly on the front street, the frontage of our community. Recycling is a very important shared value of many members of Berkeley Co-Housing. Environmental values was something that our founders shared. We now have 2 trash bins for 14 households. We have 3 recycling bins for paper and glass, and we have 2 composting bins. Berkeley Co-Housing was actually one of the first test cases in the pilot to decide whether the city would go with curbside composting. So food scraps, even meat, as well as greens from around the garden go in there. So this has been a wonderful way to improve our quality of life here. We did bring in a designer to build this beautiful structure, to create a pergola for wisteria, hardenbergia, and other beautiful plants, which very importantly improves the view from our neighbors' windows who live right here next to this important enclosure. The last thing I want to share here, and the latest improvement, is that we began to notice we were all eager to find a way to get rid of plastic. And we also have batteries and toxics. So this is actually now a communal waste station for putting things like plastic bags, like metal fuel containers, ink, various things, as well as plastics that the city of Berkeley won't take in the recycle bins. And it's part of our chores, including mine, to take these to other recycle stations and also the hazardous waste site here in the county.
We have people in our community doing everything from traditional jobs to consulting at home, retirees, people running their own business. So a number of us do drive cars. We hope not to drive them as often. We support each other in bicycling more.
We are at the West Bike Shed here at Berkeley Co-Housing. This is one of 2 large double sheds that we as a community came together, designed, and had built here since we actually moved in. So it's one of our large capital improvement projects. and one that really reflects a core activity here, which has been bicycles and bicycle riding. We have cargo bikes, tandem bikes, recumbent bikes, we have an electric bike, I think we still have that. We've had collapsible bikes, and we've had an array of kids bikes, road bikes, commuter bikes, double long cargo bikes, and trailers over the years. And this, can tell you, this is a highly used and somewhat contested terrain at Berkeley Co-housing. Bicycles are actually the main way, I would say, we have grown into alternative transport, even more since moving here. There's a lot of lessons that we've learned in the process of creating these bike sheds. The challenge for some of us over time in lifting a bike and hanging it up, we found that to be a challenge. We have a bike for almost every adult, and in some cases 2 or 3 bikes, as well as bicycles for, I think, all of the children at this point. So it's a pretty important part of our community. Here we are in the bicycle parking lot of Berkeley Co-housing, right next to our common house. This is a project that started as a personal initiative, but it has grown over the years into very much a community-supported project that continues to be adapted. So it started as a kids' toy parking lot, really, in the front part, using recycled bricks from our neighbor across the fence. But that grew into an entire bike parking lot. Despite having these sheds, really, we're not parking the bikes all the time in the sheds. It's inconvenient. So this became a way for both visitors and community members to keep their bikes outside for those seasons, especially when it doesn't rain, and even in our rainy season. We're at the biggest of our rain gardens. Working with water has been an evolving learning process here, really. We began with drought and concern about water conservation, but one of the effects of the climate here is that we have rapid torrential rains that are growing more rapid and torrential due to climate change here in the Bay Area. This rain garden is essentially a pit in the ground filled with mulch and covered with rocks, surrounded by absorbent earth and plants. This rain garden is a project where a formal proposal was made by Alice Green and supporters of this. It did cost community money, and it's on common ground. So it went through several discussions to work out the details, to explain why it was necessary. One of the things that happened is we were asked, I was involved with Alice on this, but we were asked to bring in professional designers to make sure that we were looking at an entire system rather than one project at a time. And so this was actually laid out with some help and labor from a group here in Berkeley. The impetus for the rain garden system here came from Alice's getting a book. She won a contest for reducing energy use, one of the highest reducers of energy use in the city, won a little award, which was credit at the local Berkeley Ecology Center bookstore. And so she got a book on rain gardens and gray water and began to share that with us. So it's been a very interesting evolution. What's remarkable is this has been here for a couple years. It has definitely helped reduce flooding under this house. That was a big reason for support for this. And it is also, due to the systems above it on the property, it's reduced flooding in front of my house, which I'm very happy about. I will say that those kind of problems under the houses really became an issue about 5 years ago when flooding started to damage flooring and cause mold and health issues. But we didn't have a solution until this process that Alice initiated came along. This has been a great opportunity for reflection, being able to prepare this keynote speech for you, and to really dive deep into these stories that we tell, and all people in communities tell stories. Go into the stories and pull out some really strong contributing factors that are in the flow over time of how we have been continuously learning how to work together.
For all the talk about green building and the focus on sticks and bricks, so much of the environmental savings here and the social support comes from the people in the community and how we help each other, how we support each other, teach each other, learn from each other, engage in a process.
And learn from our mistakes. Very much learning from our mistakes. So one of the important qualities is, of course, we do use a consensus process in our monthly meetings. But there was a period of time when, this is my interpretation, when a number of us had moved in and moved out, and we as a group had to relearn a proposal process. In other words, someone is irritated about something or someone has a good idea. How do we actually introduce that to the group? And we had committees coming and going. So we had this balance, and we still do, between committee work and committee ideas and projects and proposals. But an individual can also come up with ideas and work with a smaller group once we as a larger group have acknowledged that this is something we're ready to hear on the agenda at our monthly meetings. And the proposal process is actually really important and spelled out now in a way that it wasn't when you and I first moved in.
In particular, we have encouraged people to work through our standing committees like finance, common house, landscape, and get initial feedback on an idea, get input to make it better, and at the same time bring things forward to the group so it's not a committee doing a lot of work and then to be told no, don't even think about it after they've done a lot of work on it.
So a really important piece of all of that is what's called right size bite. A proposal needs to be concrete and small enough and graspable enough to be able to identify the budget for it and where that money will come from and the timing for which that project will happen. And not all of us, we have to learn that. And so we often will work with other people to craft a proposal. Ideally, we actually consult the whole group on the criteria for a good decision, whether it's the sofa in the common house or a rain garden. But in truth, not everybody shares the same interests and passions. So it's really about finding the people who need to be found. Another area of learning has also been around really bringing back in experts periodically, or people who have a specialty in a particular area. Because we are one smart group of people, and some of us are incredible do-it-yourselfers and penny pinchers, and between that, some projects will never get, have not been brought to fruition until other people said, you know what, we want to hear a design for water runoff on the community, not just a series of single projects. Although we did approve those single projects that you saw, but later it became part of a larger design so we could understand how they all fit together.
We also require people bringing forward a proposal to list out not just why to support it, but what are some of the cons and considerations, what are some of the issues or challenges. We want people to think about that, and we look at how well does the proposal indicate that people are taking time to get beyond their personal needs and preferences and talk to other people in the community with different points of view.
And one of the learnings is also to separate the fact that sometimes we have difficult relationships with other members of the community. But in the proposal process, we're really creating a space where we're looking at the proposal and our community, not the personalities involved. And that's really important. It's also important I think in our own work that we've taken occasional time to try and have remediation and healing around some of the conflicts that have come up, say around pets in the community or other conflicts. And so we work always to assume that we're all working in good faith to make things happen, and I think by and large we do well on that now. But we always have to be relearning it. It's not like the system is set up and then it just runs like a clock. We have to continually check in with each other, and we don't always have time or ability to do that. So things happen on their own cycle of timing. Power of place kind of expresses our commitment to this space that we share, this 3/4 of an acre, packed full of, every corner has something meaningful going on, even if it's just a old barbecue grills. Believe me, someone in this community is conscious of every corner of our space. This is something that I think has been cultivated, and I think we do have a sense of this as a value, the aesthetics of the community as a value. We know how to subdivide into subgroup and whole group, as I said, with small groups and formal committees, ad hoc committees and informal committees, and occasionally an individual. It's just there's a whole set of group learning to be a self-governing group, learning to share leadership that is the essential ingredient to sustainability, the essential ingredient to community over time. So to summarize some of the ecological projects that we've taken on here in Berkeley Co-Housing, they come in 4 different flavors, as I think of them. One is embedded projects, embedded in the infrastructure when we went through our renovations, master designed by architects McCammett and Durrett. And those systems included things like high quality insulation and double paned windows. However, in the embedded system and values of our community as we came together is affordability. So we did not always swap out windows. So many of us have original single paned windows. Some of us, our homes were actually plumbed for potential solar hot water, but none of us have actually taken ourselves up on that. We've had aspirations for solar power over the years, but have not moved on it beyond solar powered garden lights. So the energy systems here are pretty much the same ones that we had when we moved in, and those were created through a master planning architectural engineering process. We actually have a huge issue that you might not know about in England or have in England, but that's seismic safety. Our common house actually needs to be upgraded, and that is a huge $100,000 potential project for us that we are in the middle of, that we just simply couldn't deal with earlier. The other kinds of projects besides the embedded ones are the ones that we're learning over time how to do. Some, such as the graywater and rain gardens, or the graywater and drought-tolerant gardens, has come from personal initiative in our own semi-private garden space. The third type is a personal initiative or a small group initiative that comes to the community for approval because it's going to happen in a common space. And there might or might not be a budget that the other community members need to okay. The fourth, and an example of that are some of the smaller rain garden projects, what we do with the community garden, for example. Another aspect, the final one, is large-scale community projects that really do require everyone to at least review and learn about what's needed. And that would be really the process of learning, for example, how to transform our water and flood design system. The community was designed by McCammett and Durrett to kind of slope water off down the central sidewalk and end up in a storm drain that's actually at the lower western end of the property on the other side of the fence. Over time, that's proven to not really be the best practices in water, in using water. So we want to now retain as much water on site, but without the major flooding that used to occur. So the long-term process of learning more about both drought and water conservation and really a whole community-wide approach to dealing with flood that's been a great learning opportunity. And that's where I really want to take us back to the next conversation, the purpose of this, which is what are the social factors that have allowed us to make progress on all four of those types of projects, and also to learn how to work with each other in making decisions together. I think that's the crucial piece that a lot of the research on ecological values or practices in co-housing, it's a crucial piece that they haven't really been able to get into detail. As we wrap up this video tour of Berkeley Co-Housing, I really would like to put out an invitation to those of you who are applied researchers and research of all kinds to really help go into our practices and find out what are the micro level resources that are needed to help groups actually function at a high level, to learn how to do the things that we've talked about as a collective. This is very different from an academic research project. It's really about coming in and doing observation and learning how to apply those findings to other communities. Thanks.
And I would like to thank you myself, and look forward to visiting some of your communities that come out of this.
Yes.
And invite you here, if not in person, then virtual tours. Learn more about us on our cohousingcoaches.com website, and you'll find virtual VR tours on cohousing.tv.